Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. Today we're going to be continuing our Flying Pig February series with a look at Night of Man. This is one of the first games produced by Flying Pig Games. It's a Mark H. Walker design. Basically this game is, it's a science fiction game, but if you've played 65 squad battles, basically this is the game that kind of gave that game its framework, I guess you could say. Very, very similar, except that the difference is, and you can kind of see that here on the map, we don't have hexes here, or squares. So it's a little different, but it still works. And so we're going to take a look at this game. This will be actually probably the last full game of Flying Pig February. We've already done Platoon Commander Deluxe, The Battle of Kursk, Armageddon War, Old School Tactical Volume 3. Now we're doing Night of Man, and we will wrap it up with something from YA Magazine number 15. If you wish to, you can actually help select what we'll be doing from YA 15. There's a video here on my channel where I go through everything in the magazine and talk about what options we have. There's also a poll that you can vote on. It's in the community tab here on my YouTube channel. Just head over there. It should be really easy to find. And you'll be able to vote for which of 3 options that you would like to see as the culmination of Flying Pig February. So basically that's it for the preliminaries. So now let's get down to talking about the specifics about Night of Man. Night of Man is a tactical game. It's got a science fiction theme. So the setting, the background for the game is it's near future Earth. Aliens have attacked. They basically laid waste to human civilization, killed billions of people, destroyed many cities, etc., etc. They are in control of the planet. A resistance has risen. It's called the militias. So one side will be the militia, and the other side will be the aliens, who humanity has dubbed the killers for the obvious reasons. And so what this game covers is some of the conflicts between the militia forces and the forces of the killers. So it is a 2-player game. One player manages the militia. The other player manages the killers. Looking at the components, for example, we do have our hard mounted map board here. There are 4 of them. This is map number 1. As you can see here, the 1 is upside down because this is set up for scenario 1, which is a 1-map basic scenario where 3 mecha, which are alien infantry units, take on some militia units that include regular infantry, a hero, and a 50 caliber machine gun crew. So as you might guess, or hopefully can tell, these are big counters. So in my hand you can see this is a large counter, much larger than many counters you might see in places. And so you get a good amount of counters. There were 5 counter sheets, I believe, if I remember correctly, from when I punched this out. And a lot of them are these big unit counters here. You also have, counters that are used to mark units as having done something, like moved or fired. If they've done everything they can do, they get an ops complete. They can be shaken by combat. It's basically 3 steps. You go from, if this guy takes 1 hit, he gets a shaken. If he takes a 2nd hit, he gets reduced. And if he takes a 3rd hit, he's dead. There are ways to both rally your troops from a shaken back to full strength, gung-ho, ready to go. And there's also ways to reconstitute a reduced unit. And all of that stuff is done by cards. This is a card-driven game. There are no dice. Everything is done by cards. You get a deck of 54 cards. Nice deck, good quality. Basically everything in this game, even though this is from, I believe, 2015, 16, something like that. So, several years ago now at this point. Typical Flying Pig quality. Everything is nice. The counters are big and thick. As I mentioned, they're sturdy, very nice, very well done. The artwork in the game is great. Everything is really, really well done. What you would expect, what we have come to expect over the years from Flying Pig Games. This game was designed by Mark Walker himself, and as I've mentioned a couple times, it's led into 65, and 65 has, of course, now led into the upcoming 85. So looking at the cards, well, this is an end turn card. Right on the top was an end turn card. So when you get this is a special card. There's 3 of them in the deck, I believe. This basically is the timing mechanism to end turns. You draw 3. Some scenarios may say you draw 2 or whatever. This is something, again, that if you played 65 uses this same system. So if you drew that for one of your 4 cards when you start a turn, each side gets 4 cards. If you draw that, you would draw an additional card, but the end turn would count. So you could have some really short turns, and you can have some turns where you go through the entire deck. This is more of a normal card in some ways, only because it's got 2 actions on it. So you have 3 different categories. You have actions. So this guy's got a reaction and a support on it. So basically, you play like a second wind card. If I had, this guy moved, I can say I'm playing my second wind card and the move goes away. So now he becomes what's called an eligible unit and he can do anything. So then I could play another action card like fast move and say you get add 2 to your movement factor. His movement factor is a 3. So he could actually move up to 5 movement points worth of movement. We do have terrain, as you may have noticed. There are buildings, there are woods, and there is a player aid. Here's the player aid. One side has our terrain key on it, so you have examples at the bottom of the various terrains. At the top, you have your various types of units. The cover factor is how it impacts combat. And then there's some notes, like buildings, for example. They cost 2 MPs for aliens, 1 MP for the first building, square entered an impulse for an Earth militia, and then 2 for subsequent. And vehicles can't go into the buildings. So aliens are always 2 when they go into a building. The humans get 1 to go in and then 2 after that if they move within the building. Pretty straightforward. The other side has your combat tables. Basically, the units' abilities, their firepower, and their defense, if they have armor, etc., will impact. This is armor piercing, so this is vehicles. And then you have your HE for soft targets. And so talking about the units and what they have on their counter. So here we have the mecha. So this is alien killer. This is the killers. This is their infantry unit. So at the top, you have your targeting modifier. And then over here, you have their AP factor. So that's their attack against, armor piercing attack, basically. The 2 that's kind of almost hidden under his arm is the HE factor. So that's their firepower against soft targets like human infantry. Movement factor, and the movement factor has a number, which is how many points of movement they have, and then the L underneath it indicates it's a leg unit. This over here is their armor factor. You can see that's an asterisk. It basically means they're a soft target. They don't have an armor factor. But this particular unit, if we get a little closer, these over here are abilities, and they have 2 abilities, and this one at the top is difficult to target, I think, or hard, something like that. I forget the specific name, but that gives a -1 to the HE firepower of the unit that attacks them. So it kind of serves as an armor almost, but not quite. So that's one of the things. And the abilities and the powers, like here on the infantry. So this is human infantry, right? They don't really do well against armor. That's their HE. So again, not quite as good as the mecha. Their movement is less, but they make up for it in their ferocity in the assault, because that's an assault plus, which gives them a +1 to their firepower when they are in an assault. So close combat, melee, whatever you want to call it. This down here is an ability. I mean, not an ability, a power. And the power is explosive rounds. That's what this one means. So there's a chart of all the different abilities and powers in the rule book. And I probably won't go through all of them, but I may talk about what they are as they come up when I'm playing the scenario, which will be the next video after this one. So, um, so yeah, they have various things that they can do based on their powers, which are on the left, and their abilities on the left side, and the powers on the bottom. Powers have to be activated by a card. So here, I just actually pulled one that had one. So you see the power keyword here. That if you had this, you could use your power. So if I played this as a fire action for my infantry, they would be able to use their power for explosive rounds, which adds 2 to their HE firepower. So that weak 1 here becomes a 3, and then they really have the ability to maybe do some damage to the enemy. Now, there are also heroes, and they, generally speaking, are mostly valuable for their abilities and powers. Now, Jack has, this is Inspirational, which adds 1 to the targeting modifier or HEF of units within 2 squares. So she's an inspirational leader, essentially, is what she is. And so she buffs units that are within 2 squares of her. This isn't hexes, this is squares. I think we already mentioned that. So it's a little bit different, but you're able to move as a leg unit. You can move orthogonally or diagonally. So you can move, move this way, you can move this way. We can move over sideways, we can go backwards like that. There's very, very varied. Now, you have to take into account the terrain, of course, and they're going to have various movement costs for moving through some of these things, but that is generally speaking how they work. Now, Jack here, as I mentioned, the blue one there, that's Inspirational. The one above it is the Assault Plus. So that means that she's kind of a badass when it comes to close combat. Then you have weapons teams, like this guy is a 50 caliber weapons team. They have the no move and fire, so you can't move and fire this one because that's a big machine gun. It doesn't really make sense to allow them to pick up the gun and move and fire. The move and fire is an action. It's on the cards. It allows you to move half your movement points and fire with a -1 to your HEF. So it's there's a penalty for doing it, but you can do it. So again, all these things, moving, firing, being marked as moved, fired, ops complete, all that stuff is something that you'll see in a lot of other tactical games, including Flying Pig's own games like Platoon Commander and Armageddon War and Old School Tactical. They all have some kind of variation on that where you move and where you're marked as moved or fired or both, or ops complete or used or whatever. The terminology might vary a little bit, but the concepts are all the same. This is very much a tactical game that you would expect, So, and then this other one here, this is Suppression. So the way Suppression works is it adds 2 to the unit's HE firepower for this impulse and any hit, and no matter how many hits are drawn, it's a automatic shake. So, I mean, that's something that you can use, and basically what it means is you can't kill the unit, you're just making them keep their heads down. That's what suppression means after all. So, again, all the core tenets of tactical fighting are present in this system, as you would expect. I mean, it has been adapted to 65 and now 85, the upcoming 85, which are both historical-based tactical games using the same system. The only main difference, aside from the unit capabilities and things like that, and the historical settings and so on, is that it's a hex-based game and this is a square-based game. That's one. The core mechanics are very similar between those two, between the squad battle games, which are 65 and 85, and this game. Mechanically, it's very similar. The cards look very similar with the same kind of actions. Obviously, there are differences with this being a science fiction game, especially when you come to talking about things like the Walker units, which we'll get into in a little bit. So those are your abilities. As I mentioned, you have actions, moved, ops complete, fired, all that stuff. The cards, they have various things like, like I mentioned, you can use reaction. So reaction is a card you can play to kind of interrupt an attack, like this one. So if you have this card in your hand and the opponent's firing, and you can slap this down and you get to fire back first. It applies to vehicles in this case. And then you have support, where you can, if you had a fire card, so if we played the fire card, we could say I'm going to have aimed shot. And then this one is also basically for vehicles because we're talking about the targeting modifier. So vehicle combat involves a 2-hit. And again, this is stuff that's common, right? When you have Shermans firing at a Panzer IV, you might have a 2-hit number you need to roll first. And then once you hit it, then you roll for what happened after you hit it. What kind of hit you did. What damage did you do to the tank? Where did you hit it? Did you hit it in the turret? Did you hit it in the flank? Et cetera, et cetera. Same kind of concept. You roll to see if you hit it, and then, well, you don't roll, you draw a card. So you would draw cards, and again on the card, here's one that says turret hit. So this side is basically your targeting side, and then this side is your hit and your damage that you would do, and you would use this when you're trying to see if you hit it with a soft attack. So HE, if you're firing with infantry on infantry and you get a hit here, you don't worry about this number. You just look at the hit. And if it says hit, then you hit it. That's it, plain and simple. And as I mentioned, multiple hits, there's 3 steps: shaken, reduced, eliminated. So if you could accumulate enough firepower to have, like, say, 4 cards, because that's what it equates to. If you get your firepower up to 4, like this 50 cal has a 4. If that doesn't get modified down to something lower than that, you draw 4 cards. And if you had all 4 cards had hit on them, you'd wipe the unit out and overkill it, basically. So that's how soft combat works. Now, when you're talking about vehicular combat, because you have to, as I mentioned, you have to hit the target, which uses the numbers or the turret hit would, the number first to determine if you hit it. That's what this number here is for. And so you basically look at the way this works is to attack the target, you have to play a fire card, of course. And then once you play the fire card and you're in line of sight, you would do all the things in here that you would do for any combat. You figure out the range, and then that's going to impact your firepower, basically. And then the target, add to armor. So, at long range, the longer the range, the less effective your AP is going to be, your AP firepower. And then depending on where you get hit, that's going to add or remove from your armor. If you get hit in the turret, it improves your armor. If you get hit in the side or the rear, and that's based on facing. The turret is, as Mark explained in the rule book, it's basically a simplification of it. Rather than having like turret facing and all this other stuff, it's basically just on the card, if it says turret hit, it gets hit in the turret, and you add 1 to the armor factor. So once you've established that you've hit it and where you hit it, you use that number with the AP firepower to determine whether or not, what number you're going to have to look at here on the bottom to determine if you hit the tank. And if you hit a tank in general with another tank, you destroy it. So if you hit it and your number is, let me rephrase, if you hit it and your number is it within the right range, then you kill it. So there are ways. There's also artillery. So there are artillery cards in here. See if we can find one. Of course, I'm not going to find one now. I don't know how many there are. There aren't a lot. Here's one. So artillery, you end up getting to attack 1 square and 2 adjacent squares. So, and it can be any pattern. So you could do like this one, and this one, or you could do this one, this one, or like this, or like this. So as long as you take your center and you can extend it in any direction. So you can make an L or an upside down, kind of an R, I guess, or small lowercase r, etc., like that. And then you get 3 AP firepower and 3 HEF firepower. But if you hit a tank with artillery, if you hit an armored vehicle with artillery, the only thing you can do is shake it. Even if you hit it 3 times, you're only going to shake it. So I kind of contemplated just playing Scenario 1, but Scenario 1's very basic. Basically, these 3 mechas enter from the left side of the board. The human militia enters from the right side of the board. They shoot at each other, kill each other, etc. It's basically designed to teach the game, which is good because that's, kind of what I was trying to do anyway in this video. But it's not all that exciting, I guess, ultimately. So I figured I would keep this down under a half hour. We'll just go through all the things in the game. And then next video, we're going to play one of the scenarios. There are 8 in the game. Of increasing complexity. Essentially, it tells a story, and it's a story of their struggle, the humanity's struggle against these killers, these killer aliens. So the scenarios kind of play out that story, and you play through the course of it. And honestly, I hope this game gets expansions because there's a lot of potential in there. Obviously, potential for it to grow, and there is, of course, the ability to spin up your own stuff as well. But, I kind of like the narrative stuff. And, especially in a setting like this where it's tactical and you have this overarching story around it. But within that, you have your ability to really shape events through the gameplay on the board. So I'm going to wrap this up now. I appreciate it if you've made it this far through the entire thing. And then I'll be coming back very soon with a full play scenario, probably one of the later scenarios, as I mentioned, where you'll get to see the walkers, and they have the panther and the cheetah. There's a light walker, that's the cheetah, and a heavy walker, that's the panther. Those things are badass, and you get to kit them out yourself, and we'll talk about that and show how it's done. And then we'll have them fight it out. So there'll be Abrams and Bradleys and mentals with telekinetic ability, throwing metal around, and we're just gonna have a bunch of fun with one of these later scenarios because there's a whole lot going on. So for now, that'll do it. As always, my name's Joe. This has been Hexed Encountered. Please consider liking, sharing, and/or subscribing. You hear this rigmarole every time if you watch all the way through my videos. But it stays the same. I'm trying to grow my channel, obviously, so I appreciate your support. And anything you might do to help me, I would greatly appreciate it. So I do hope you enjoyed the video. I do hope you will come back and watch my next video from this series, which will be an actual gameplay of this game. This is a cool game. It's fun. It's tactical. I don't care if you like sci-fi or not. This is tactical goodness. Units slamming into each other and going at it. So until next time, thanks and happy gaming.